on my clock, so I've got the recording started, and let's get started. For those of you out on the phone who don't know me, I'm Lisa Thaley. I am the Young Member Council Chair for this year. I have that very, very distinct honor of working with some awesome Young Member Council folks to get these type programs and other things for nationals pulled together. Before we get started today on this professional development call, just had a couple very quick announcements for everyone and some other things going on. First thing up, we do have an abstract review going on for Small Business Conference. Any young member that's interested in submitting an abstract but wants to have another young member who's presented in the past review their abstract, give a little bit of feedback, we are happy to do that. Get in touch with myself or Jeff Duguid after this, and we will get you paired up with someone to review that. Also coming up a week from today, next Thursday, we have our first Young Member Council meeting of the year. A lot of good stuff going on this year with the Leadership Development Program in the works, the Run to 2020. Also have a few open positions still on the Young Member Council. So if you're interested in getting involved, all of that dial-in information is on the website, same.org. So please reach out to me to get that. Go to the website. Come join us. The call is open to anyone and everyone. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Gus Boschert, who is our Vice Chair of Programs and the mastermind behind everything that's happening today with this great professional development call. So Jeff, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Welcome, everybody. Today, it is my honor to introduce you to Gus Boschert, and he is a young member himself, and he's here today to help us learn about the PE licensing process and help answer some questions in that area. Gus is a young member and a project manager at Jacobs, where he works in their Federal Buildings and Infrastructure section. Gus has 10 years of experience in military engineering and project management, beginning as an Army engineer officer, where he served as a platoon leader, executive officer, and brigade training officer. While in active duty, Gus deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan. Gus has supported the Joint Operational Engineering Board, the Air Force Civil Engineering Center, and the Joint Staff J4 Engineering Division. Gus is a licensed professional engineer in Virginia and a certified project management professional. Gus recently received the SAME DC Post Award for outstanding contributions by a young civilian member, and he serves as the Young Engineer Director on the National Society of Professional Engineers. It's with my great honor and thanks that we have the honor to welcome Gus.
All right, thanks, Jeff, and good afternoon, everyone. Really excited to talk to you today about getting a PE license and kind of the steps that go into that. It was one of the things that when I was in college, it was a goal of mine, and then coming up through the Army, I had a few, I guess, misconceptions or a few ideas that I thought that I wouldn't be able to ever do it. And so it's been really a kind of a personal goal of mine to make sure that there are other folks that who, if they're interested in getting a license, that they have the resources that to be able to do so as they go forward. And that's part of the reason why I've been as involved in the National Society of Professional Engineers and in SAME, is to kind of help young engineers get licensed if that's what they want to do. To start up front, I know SAME has a lot of constituencies. There and I know there are a few of the interns that work at Jacobs have registered for this, which I appreciate. So and I know some of them are ROTC cadets, others are not. So to those guys, you know, a lot of the information here, even though it's focused towards a military audience, is going to be valuable as well. And I'll try and highlight some of those things. And I'm specifically focusing on the PE license as opposed to the registered architect or architectural registration, because I don't know very much about that. But I think probably some of the same ideas will be valuable to those to folks that are architects as well. So my in kind of the promotional materials for this session, I talked about the fact that the PE license is kind of an outward sign of your qualifications. Similar to in the Army, we have the airborne badge and tab, sapper tab, ranger tab, things like that, that show that you've been able to accomplish something and you've achieved some certain skill. And in my view, the PE license is similar to that. It communicates to clients and communicates to other people that you work with that you have a certain degree of skill. Whether you use it for its intended purpose of signing and sealing drawings or not, that level of competency is indicated by the letters after your name. And so that's why I think it's important for those that are eligible to consider pursuing the PE license. So for our purpose today is to describe to the young members the values of professional licensure. What are the benefits to you if you are a military member pursuing that, to pursue the PE license, and how it might affect your career? Then I really want to talk about some tangible action steps that you can take as you progress through your junior officer time or your early career outside the military to help you set yourself up for success to get your PE license. And then I've compiled a list of resources, not an exhaustive list, but it's a pretty good starting point for resources on how to perform the steps that I'll talk about. All right. So what is the PE license and why do you need it? A PE license is different than a certification, right? So as Jeff mentioned, I'm a licensed PE and I'm certified project management professional. Those are two different things. A license is given by a jurisdictional body, a state, and says you are licensed to be able to do this specific thing. A certification basically means you've met the requirements, studied something, and taken a test. In my view, a license is much more it has a much greater level of responsibility associated with it, because you have to continue to be at the forefront of your profession going forward. And it's similar to a legal license, an attorney license, or to a medical license in that regard. Now, there are some misconceptions I've heard when when I was in the Army and talking to other young engineers. But why is it useful? Do I need to get it if I'm in the military? Well, I'll tell you that talking to the Navy Civil Engineer Corps Sessions officer, they said, the quote's right there, achievement of professional registration of either a PE or RA is a requirement to be considered for 05 in the CEC. They also, when I was talking to them, they sent me some data. Then almost everyone at the 04 level and above is a PE, and no one above the level of 05 in the Civil Engineer Corps is not registered either as a PE or a registered architect. So it's virtually a requirement to go above the 05 level in the Navy. The Air Force guidance is a little less strict in that regard. It's highly encouraged, but it's not a requirement for promotion. And then in the Army, it's it's even a little bit less of a focus, but it's still highly viewed at senior levels. So across all the branches of the service, it's an important thing, and it will show a commitment to your profession above and beyond what's typically required. And it's really the mark of excellence among the engineering community. So now I want to transition to talk about some practical steps that you can take in pursuing your PE license, both from the time that you graduate from your undergraduate institution up through the time you're ready to take the exam. And I know there are a bunch of folks that are on this call probably at different levels in your career. So we'll go through each of these steps, and hopefully you'll find something useful wherever you are in the process. But as engineers, we take a complex problem, break it down to a more simple, manageable, and tractable steps, and then come to a conclusion based on that. So it's a similar thing with a military operation. So we're going to talk about these in terms of phases. Phase 1 will be as an engineer in training. Phase 2 will be the application. Phase 3 is preparation, and phase 4 is the examination. Now, this came from an article that and Jeff is going to send out the slides afterwards, and all of my sources are listed in the notes of the slides. This came from an article that was published in the Army Engineer magazine in 2008. This particular phasing construct, but it mirrors my experience, and I thought it was a good way to break these things out. So starting with engineer in training, you become an engineer in training following your passing the fundamentals of engineering exam, which if you haven't taken it, that's really the first step that you should take. So as an engineer in training, you graduate from an engineering program at an ABET accredited university, take the fundamentals of engineering exam, and then while you're working, get to know other PEs in your chain of command and keep in touch with them throughout your junior officer time. So this was where I mentioned before I had a misconception in my time in the Army, and I thought that if I didn't work for a PE, I would never be able to get a PE. And that's a pretty common understanding, I think, talking to young members both in NSPE and SAME. I think there's a perception that if you don't know a PE who can sign off on your work, then you'll never be able to get licensed, and that's not 100% true. But if you know PEs in your chain of command, if you have PEs in your chain of command, or you're working at a firm, or you have professors that are PEs, things of that nature, you're going to want to keep in touch with them and give them kind of routine updates on your life as you're working, so that when it does come time to apply for the PE exam, when you're getting into phase 2, you're not an unknown quantity to them, and they remember you. The big thing during the engineering training phase is to work on engineering projects. This is another one where my time in the Army, as a combat engineer, I wasn't really doing the same type of engineering that I was doing in college. I wasn't doing design work. I was doing performing route clearance while I was deployed, working a lot with explosives and demolitions. But it wasn't something that a PE signed off on. So I wasn't sure that I would have the right work experience. But there's a lot of things that you do as an Army engineer. There's a lot of things that you do as a military engineer from any branch of service that should ultimately count for your PE license and for your experience. But you need to keep track of that. So a recommendation that I would make is that if you're working on a project, keep a note of the details of that particular project. Or if you go to the range as a Army engineer and you're out in the field for a week building fortifications and things like that, keep note of that, because those become what you'll end up writing in your application for the exam. And you want to make sure that you have a good detail of what your responsibilities are and what your responsibilities were, how you perform the task, and be detailed in that regard, because that's what the licensing boards are going to be looking for when they review your application, is that level of detail. Now, depending on where you are and what state you're in, and which state you want to become licensed in, you have a different experience requirement. So in some cases, it's 4 years, in some cases it's 5 years. In some cases, they'll let you take the exam immediately after college, and then you have to work a certain amount of time. So it's really incumbent on you as an individual to figure those kind of specifics out based on your state. But I'll talk about some resources towards the end that will help you with that. But the focus here is you want to have progressive experience. So in the military, your responsibilities as they increase from lieutenant up through, or from 01 to 02 and from 02 to 03, you're going to have progressively more challenging assignments and progressively more challenging projects. And so that really fits well with what the licensing boards are looking to see. And it will really help you out to keep a project log, whether it's in your green notebook or on Excel or something like that, where you can keep track of your the details of your project as you go along. So once you are ready to take the exam, you've gained your the experience that's required, you're going to go on to apply to take the exam. And my recommendation here is that you look at several states. You know, some states have a requirement that you must be a resident of that state unless you're in the military. Other states have other states, when you apply, you basically want to apply for a place that's going to make it easy for you to take the exam, that will give you the right level of experience for your time in the military. For my state in Virginia, military engineering experience is able to count as long as it's substantially similar to what a civilian engineer would do at the same career level. So that's why it's really important to have that detailed project list, so that you can provide it over to in your licensing application, so that the board that's reviewing your packet can say, yeah, that's substantially similar, or not. And then different states have different continuing education credit requirements. So here we have, you're getting PDH certificate for participating in, or for listening to me talk, really. So you're going to, you would need to get a certain amount before you renew your license. Some states, Arizona, for instance, doesn't require any continuing education credits. Virginia has a pretty reasonable amount. It's 16 hours every 2 years, which is not a whole lot of continuing education credits. But there are some that have 24 or even more, and you're going to want to know what those are beforehand, especially as a military engineer in any branch of service. You don't have to be registered in the state that you're working in. You just have to be registered, so that you'll keep your license renewed, and it's one less thing you have to worry about beforehand. I would, just like any other kind of bureaucratic process, I'd recommend keeping copies of all your application materials, and keeping a record of who you talked to and when things were sent and when they should be received, and confirming that they were received, and so on, because there's a lot of different pieces that make up your application for a license in almost all of the jurisdictions. Character references and professional references and narratives of your experience, and so on. And all these things are sent from and transcripts and things like that. They're sent from different locations to one kind of state agency that you don't want to rely on them solely to make sure all of your application materials get together. So I recommend keeping copies of all that stuff. And then, as I mentioned, character references and work references. This is where a lot of I think there's where you really have to read through your the laws related to professional licensure in the state that you're interested in, and really understand that. Some states say you need 5 references, 3 of whom need to be character references and need to be professional engineers. 2 of them need to be work references, and if they're licensed, that's great. If not, it's not a requirement. Other states have different levels of different numbers of and different stringencies of that requirement. So it's really important for you to understand those requirements and start identifying early who you can use for each of those references. Yeah, and there's so many variations among the different jurisdictions that it's really hard to say with a definitive declarative statement that this is how it should be or how it is, since each of those states are different. So you'll have to do a little bit of research to figure out what the requirements are in states that you're interested in. And in most jurisdictions, I want to make sure that I cover this too. Most jurisdictions require you to be in the state that you're, like physically take the exam in the state that you're looking to be licensed in. So you're going to want to make sure that you're, if you want to be licensed in Hawaii while you're stationed in Hawaii, and take the exam while you're stationed there, that's great. But if you apply for the exam in Hawaii because you think it'd be cool to be licensed in Hawaii, then you have to travel to Hawaii to take the exam. And if you're going all the way to Hawaii, it's not fun to sit in a classroom for 8 hours. So think about your convenience when you're doing your application as well. All right, preparation. A couple pieces of advice here. You're going to want to understand the format of the exam. For the most part, every exam is. I'll talk about that. I'll talk about the specific format of the exam next on the next slide. But you're going to want to look at the ncees.org webpage, and I have a link to that on the resources slide. And kind of understand what's going to be asked of you in each of these disciplines. You can see the list of the disciplines there on the right, and basically any type of engineering that you've studied in school, you can probably find an exam that's targeted on that. Now, my recommendation for you is that even if you're working, say in my case, I studied mechanical engineering in school, but most of my work, again, was combat engineering in the Army and a little bit of general engineering, kind of civil type engineering from work experience. But when I looked at the exam specifications and what was required for each of the exams, I knew that I had textbooks related to the mechanical engineering topic areas. I didn't have textbooks related to the other sources, so I knew I would be able to at least find the answer or find references much more easily. There's, in this my personal opinion, there's a lot to be said for the time that you spent in university studying a specific topic, that even if you don't use it on a day-to-day basis, it will come back to you while you're studying for the exam a lot easier than something that you may not have been exposed to during your on-the-job training. I think there was had a random thought in there that I wanted to mention, but it escaped me now. So there are many resources available to help you prepare for the exam in terms of review courses, study guides, apps, and things like that you can download on your phone, flashcards, and whatnot. Each of those items will help you out, but nothing prepares you for the exam more than taking practice tests and working practice problems. The exam is a standardized test, similar to other things. So you're similar to other standardized tests. So you want to make sure that you're doing the amount of work that you need to get the answer, and not doing more work than you need to, because you're going to run out of time. So those are kind of my general ideas for preparation. But really understanding what those exam specifications are going to be really important for you as you go into the exam. The other thing to think about here is that even though you might take the exam in mechanical, if in my case, for instance, I did take the exam in mechanical. I'm now a project manager. I'm not working as a mechanical engineer, but if I were there are other situations where you might have studied one thing in school and then you're working as something else, and being able to sign and stamp drawings doesn't depend on what exam you took. Which exam you took. It depends on your competency. You evaluate your ability to be competent in a particular area, and so that's where kind of, as NSPE would argue, that's where your ethical responsibility comes in with being a professional engineer. Is that you need to be you only practice in the areas where you're competent. So don't worry as much about taking the exam and where you think you want to work as much as taking the exam in what you can pass the exam in. All right. So in the examination, NCEES is moving towards a computer-based testing, which would mean you have more opportunities to take the exam, and there are rolling applications. I don't know yet when that is going to be finally done. I know they've transitioned that for the fundamentals of engineering exam to computer-based testing, but I believe they still offer some pencil and paper exams. Those are held in October and April. So from a timeline perspective, I took the April exam in 2014. I applied. I started my application process in the fall of 2013 with the Virginia Department of Professional and Occupational Regulation, and then moved. I think I finished the application in January, and then started studying in January through April. For most of the disciplines on the previous page, there's 8-hour exam and 80 questions. There are 2 exceptions to that. One is nuclear, and that's I think a 9.5-hour exam and 85 questions. And the other is structural, which is a 16-hour exam over 2 days. The exam format, they're open book and open notes, but your notes must be bound, so you can't have loose sheets of paper, but you can bind them in a 3-ring binder or similar. And basically, you can't shake your book and have it have stuff fall out of it. With that, though, knowing where to find the information is as important as knowing the information itself. So it comes down to speed in answering your questions on the exam. And so if you have to teach yourself how to do something in the exam, you've already lost the battle. You need to be you need to know right where to look based on the type of question that you're being asked, and what the references that you need, and so on. But you can bring as many references as you need to. So I recommend not limiting yourself, but knowing what's in all of your references and where to go. And then finally, calculators. This is something I think everyone can agree with. The worst thing that you could have happen to you is run out of batteries on your calculator mid-exam. So you want to make sure you have a redundant calculator in case something happens. Pencils are provided for the pencil and paper exam, and I'm not sure how the computer-based testing works in that regard, since I took the paper exam. So next, we'll talk about some of the resources that are available to you, and other places you can look for more information. So, as I mentioned, the National Council of examiners for engineering and surveying, NCEES, they're the ones that write the exam. They have exam specifications, and of those 80 questions for the disciplines, it will tell you this percentage of questions are on this topic. Another percentage is on other topics. For the mechanical exam, for instance, the morning portion of the exam, the first 4 hours, is general mechanical knowledge. So they'll ask questions about HVAC and machine design and mechanics of materials and material properties, things like that. For the morning, and heat transfer was the other major topic. And then the afternoon is more focused on one of those three areas: heat transfer, HVAC, or machine design. And so you want to understand what those are and play to your strengths there. But NCEES has specifications for all those exams. NSPE, as Jeff mentioned, I'm the young director on the board of directors for NSPE. So I know that there are a lot of really great resources that are available there. In particular, they created a series of kind of state-by-state assessments that it's basically a database of the requirements for each of the states, organized into similar topics that we've been discussing. What are the exam requirements, continuing education requirements, experience requirements, things like that. And then they list them all, and you can compare different states. So the link is there. If you're not a member of NSPE, the reports are about $10 for each assessment. If you are a member, or if you're a student, you should become a student member because it's free. Student memberships are free, and so then you could get access to that pretty easily. And if you're not a member of NSPE, I absolutely recommend becoming a member of NSPE. But I know that there's a lot of competing demands on your time and energy and money. So I don't expect everyone to rush out and join NSPE, but it's a really great organization that has a similar mission, a complementing mission to SAME. There's also technical societies that have resources, ASME, ASCE, etc. And they can help with some of those, some of the more technical questions. In terms of paying for the exam, that's going to be slightly different for each state. Each state has different application fees and whatnot. For me, in Virginia, the Virginia Society of Professional Engineers, which is a state-affiliated society of NSPE, offered a scholarship for that. Once I passed the exam, they were able to reimburse me for the exam. But I know there are other programs available to you if you're a military member, through the Education Resource Center, or in the Army, it's the Army Continuing Education Center. Your chain of command can help out with this, especially if you have a chain in your chain of command, a PE or PEs that can help you out, give you their opinions. Each of the services has a credentialing opportunities online portal that helps you kind of align your military occupational specialty with credentials that are available to you. They're to varying degrees valuable for officers. And the Army one points you to careerresource.org or something like that, which is a Department of Labor website that helps you find information. It's a little more focused on the enlisted side, but it's a good resource to look through anyway. And then for review materials, most of the review books are published by PPI, and I forget what PPI stands for off the top of my head, but their webpage is listed there. And then there's a kind of a University of Southern Florida has a FE question of the day, which is a pretty good way to kind of test yourself. And then if you also search for apps in the App Store for your phone, PPI also has like a PE and a flashcards that you can use and things like that. So there's really a lot of resources available to you should you take the opportunity or avail yourself of the opportunity to do that. But with that, I'd like to turn it over to any questions you might have, and hopefully you got some good information no matter where you are in your career.
Thank you, Gus. That was an excellent presentation. I feel like I'm almost ready to take the PE exam. We haven't had anybody submit a question, and I forgot to announce that in the very beginning. But if you do have a question that you would like Gus to address, if you can submit it in the chat bar on your GoToMeeting screen, we will be watching for that and help get those questions addressed.
Yeah, Jeff, while we're waiting for people to type in questions, Yvonne had a good comment, and I came up with the same thought. That's why you were speaking about costs for licensures, exams, those kind of things. SAME does have a credentialing reimbursement program called the CAP. The next round of that will come up. Applications will be due, I think it's early to mid-October. So a little bit of time between now and then, but if it's something you're interested in and you're a SAME member, please take a look at the website, learn a little bit more about that. Myself or Danielle Barner, our Vice Chair of Mentoring and Recognition, can help you out with any details or questions.
Yeah, Lisa, that's a great point, and sorry I neglected to mention that. I actually joined SAME after I became a PE, so I didn't really look through a lot of the resources that SAME had available. One of the other things that I wanted to mention too, with respect to review courses, is that the Minnesota Society of Professional Engineers, again, it's the state society affiliated with NSPE, offers a pretty comprehensive review course for many of the disciplines. I think, well, at least civil and mechanical that I know of. And I believe it's a relatively reasonable priced review course. I think it's about $900, which is pretty pricey. But if you're a NSPE member, and new members have an introductory rate of about $200, you get a $200 discount on your membership or on your review class from Minnesota Society of Professional Engineers. So a lot of times, SAME, NSPE, and other professional organizations have memoranda of understanding that allow you to have limited benefits from the other organization while you're a member. So look into that as well.
Excellent resource, Gus. The first question that we have that came in is there a benefit that you've seen to being licensed in multiple states? And is that a common occurrence? Architects often get licensed in multiple states quite often.
So I personally have not had a need to be licensed in multiple states. I know a bunch of folks both through NSPE and at Jacobs that are licensed in multiple states, but I haven't had a need for that yet. But that to me adds even more importance to understanding what the laws and rules and regulations are for your organization. Whether you're working as in a private firm or a small firm where you might need to be or in the military, really.
So a side question to add on to that is, are you aware of states that do reciprocity between states? Is that a common occurrence that you're aware of?
Yes. So for the most part, my understanding, again, I'm not licensed in more than one state. So, but from what I understand, it's relatively easy to apply for what they call licensure by comedy, or comedy licensure. That basically you don't have to take the exam multiple times. You basically have to meet the requirements of the exam, or meet the requirements from that licensure board in the different states. So they might ask for references, a different number of references, or something like that you'll have to comply with. But it's definitely something that you should look into if that's something that where you think your work will take you to multiple locations. But when you do that, you also have to meet the renewal requirements and things like that for that other state. So if you have, like Virginia's 16 professional development hours every 2 years, I think Pennsylvania is something about the same. So you just have another renewal that you have to do. One thing that NCSS provides is, I think they don't provide it for free, but I don't know exactly what the cost is the NCSS record. And so you essentially upload your references, character references, work references, and other application materials to NCSS, and then when you apply for licensure by comedy in other states, you basically have all of the stuff saved in one location, and some states accept that as the NCSS record as fulfilling that requirement. But again, since I'm only licensed in Virginia, I don't know what I don't know the benefits. I haven't seen the benefits of that myself, and I know that in some cases, if you are working for a firm or that require you to be licensed in multiple states, they might help you out with the cost of doing that as a business expense.
That online record keeping sounds like a handy resource to have. For everybody that is on the line but not connected with us on GoToMeeting, there was a question asked for additional information on SAME's registration or reimbursement application program, and the link was sent out through GoToMeeting. But for anybody that's not connected with us, if you go to the SAME.org web page and you navigate to the Young Member page, which if you want to go there directly is SAME.org/young-member. At the bottom, there's a paragraph that talks about the CAP program and can get you additional information there. If you still have additional questions or want more info, like Lisa mentioned, please reach out to the Young Member Council team, and we'll be happy to help connect you and get all your questions answered. We'd love to see people take advantage of that, and that's a great resource. And as Gus was saying, it sounds like there's lots more that are out there as well. So it sounds very good. Do we have any other questions? And Gus, while we're waiting to see if there's just any more, I can add on to the answer that you were just providing from a marketing standpoint. Working in a firm that provides federal services for more than a decade on the marketing side, when our teams are working on federal installations, it doesn't matter the state or location, 90% of the times where they're registered. Usually single registration is sufficient with the government working in multiple locations, as long as it's on federal land. I do know that there are a few states that have rules that kind of supersede that, and they still want an additional local license. I'm not going to comment on which ones because I don't know all the details there, but I know that generally, if you're working on federal land, one license in your home state is usually where it is usually sufficient.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. That's a good clarification.
Well, I'm not seeing any additional questions coming in. So I think at this point we can wrap this up. Thank you, Gus, for taking the time and the effort to assemble this material. This is a great resource, and I hope that everybody that's on the call here got a lot of help and usefulness out of it. We have been recording this call, and we will be posting it to the SAME YouTube page, and we've got quite a few people that have requested the download link. For everybody that is on the call today, everybody will get a link to that when that's posted. I'd like to remind everybody that just as Lisa said, next week on this same GoToMeeting platform using the same call-in information, we're going to be having the next monthly council call. All young members are welcome to attend if you're interested in learning about what else is going on around the society and what else the young members are involved in. We urge you to join in. Everybody's welcome. That's a half-an-hour discussion that takes place starting at noon. Also a reminder, if you're thinking about submitting an abstract for the upcoming Small Business Small Business Conference. I apologize for that. As Lisa said, the deadline is coming up for that. Please, we'd love to help see more young members present. And Gus did an excellent job today. If you want to follow in his footsteps and do the same thing, let us know. We'll be happy to help you. And final reminder, if you have a topic that you'd like to see addressed in one of these professional development webinars, please reach out to us, let us know. We're always looking for insight and referrals for speakers or possible topics. You know, this platform is here to serve you and to provide you with the information that you want to hear. So let us know. If you don't tell us, we're just going to assume we know what you want to hear. But with that, there's still no additional questions, so I think that wraps us up. So thank you very much, Gus. We appreciate it, and we'll provide link to the recording as soon as that's posted next week.
All right. Thanks, Jeff, for inviting me. Talk to you all soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, bye.